right off the bat, there's so much going on with environmental concerns, demographic changes, trade agreements, and so forth. I'm wondering, what are the key things that you're focusing on?
Oh, that's already the first 4 hours we can discuss this.
We're at university. We ask tough questions here.
Okay. I need to get it warm up a little bit.
Yeah.
Who came today here with public transportation? 1, 2. Who came with a bicycle? Another one, 3. Who came with a car? All right. That is the challenge. That is the challenge here in the United States. A little bit less in Europe, where you have more public transportation. That is the challenge also in Asia. That is the challenge also in South America. Our society, our economies are built up on individual mobility. And automotive industry is one of the strongest industry developed countries have, but also the emerging countries actually have. It has a huge impact on employment, not only at the OEMs, but also on the suppliers, the dealers, tier 2 and tier 3 business, finance business, and so on and so on. Some are even saying that institutions like Holiday Inn and McDonald's just came because of the automobiles, because people want to have something to eat during their driving. Anyway, there's a huge impact of the auto industry. We are all depending on private and individual mobility. The auto industry had been a big part of the economic development of developed countries and emerging countries. And of course, we are facing challenges. Environmental challenges, dense of traffic and traffic challenges. We are challenging safety issues. We are coming to the limits of our natural resources. And as the auto industry has been part of the economic growth, it has been also now be part of the solutions of today's problem. That means actually that we are globally faced with big challenges of regulations, which are unfortunately not harmonized on a global scale. That means Europe has different emission standards than China. China has different emission standards than the United States. And that makes actually things more complex because our business is a global business. And especially in respect of how we can contribute on avoiding global warming and control the emissions. This is maybe the most challenging objective which we have in the future. That keeps us busy, and that actually occupies a huge part of our investments which we are allocating for new technologies. That all will not come overnight. That will take time, and it will have huge risk for the auto industry. And the auto industry is in the same transitional period with this kind of change towards new technologies as it had been maybe 100, 120 years ago, when then the consumers finally decide to go on fossil fuels and decide for the combined combustion engine. Now the consumers need to decide what will be the future technology for automobiles. Maybe electric vehicles, maybe hybrids, hydrogen vehicles, and so on and so on. And we need regulations, but we need regulations which had been achievable. And the best would be we would have one global regulations instead of many, many different regulations.
Okay. Do you see any hope anytime soon for that kind of uniformity? So the treaties that are being discussed?
Well, you know all, you have read the failure of Copenhagen, for example. I mean, that's overall very disappointing. I understand interest of the various nations. I know I have learned that this country is more depending on individual mobility than other countries, that here is a lack of investment into public transportations compared to other countries. I understand also the Indians and the Chinese. Why shouldn't have an Indian or Chinese consumer not the right to drive a car? And if you actually multiply what happens in markets like India, but especially also to China. China has overtaken the car market of the United States and will continue to be the biggest market, single market on this globe here, because consumers do have the same wish as all of us have, and that is individual mobility. And that would make it much more necessary to have one global standard, but I think we are far away from that.
Now, one of the debates here in the United States, of course, has been the government actively intervening in the fate of various car companies over the last couple of years. What opinions do you have regarding government interventions to support?
I think the auto industry needs regulation. It's a very complex product in respect of safety, in respect of emissions, fuel consumption, and it is the responsibility of the various governments to set standards. And I appreciate the federal standards President Obama and the administration has set last year in June to set standards for fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emission, because we need that kind of outlook to make the right decision in respect of our investments into the future. I'm not a friend actually of interfering in fair trade, and I'm not a friend actually of giving too many regulations which are to a certain extent disturbing competition which is necessary for this economy. You can see also that major developments, not only in the auto industry but in other areas as well, came out of competition and came out of crisis. We have seen this in many examples that whenever actually had been a crisis or severe competition, there came some companies out as a winner. Some entrepreneurs invented something new, and consumer actually take that, and that actually led to success. And I think that's the best regulation, and government should step out actually as much as necessary.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to take any other questions people might have about some of these kinds of issues, especially things like government intervention or the role.
How do the bailouts directly affect innovation for not only your company but American companies?
Well, we are an industry with an intensive amount of necessary investment into the future. We are investing approximately 10% of our revenue into the future. New products, new technologies, new factories. And we are, next to Toyota, the second biggest investor into mobility. And a bailout is a very specific situation. And what happened there did not happen because of the economic crisis. It happened because of ongoing mismanagement over many years. And one reason why this is so is that actually in a free market there would be a better competition as in a market which would be regulated. You can see this, that American companies can properly compete in other areas of the world. And this market had been too long dominated by American companies in respect of the market itself. And that means actually that there was a kind of comfort zone for these companies to strengthen their investments and focus on new technologies which consumers actually accept. A bailout is a very specific situation. I don't want to comment this. So far we have seen no influence in respect of competitiveness. I don't want to work for a company which is in a bailout situation actually. Yeah? I want to work for a company which is successful. Volkswagen as a group is very successful. We managed many crises by ourselves as well. It was not all the time honeymoon and like a positive outlook. But what made Volkswagen so far so successful is that we have a very consistent 20 years long strategy. And this strategy is based on only one thing: products. And how to optimize engineering, how to optimize production, the supply chain, the purchasing and the sales and marketing operation with its brand. that's actually which is slowly paying out now and which is actually the foundation for our success.
Carbon, they're based on the same platform, and how you guys are going to incorporate that into your plans for the future as far as hybrid or full electric.
That's what we are doing already since 15, 20 years, basing our products on common platforms. We have advanced this already. We are not using platforms anymore. We are using modules which are giving us much more flexibility. So we can actually use a condensator for an air condition, not only on one specific platform for one model line or for model lines, but we can use this from very compact cars to the luxury cars. Whatever the customer and the consumer doesn't feel, smell, taste, experience while driving, we can actually standardize. And the customer doesn't care whether this is in a Bentley, an Audi, or in a VW. But it brings actually enormous scale of economics when it comes to purchasing and to engineering as well, because you have to develop this only one time. You have only standardized supplier base globally, and that actually brings the scale of economics. And we have optimized this, as I said already, since 15, 20 years. And that is actually, if you have a brand portfolio, which is important to have, to offer compact vehicles, entry vehicles for a brand like Volkswagen. We have a couple of other brands in Europe as well, Skoda and Seat for the entry volume segment. Then Audi in the premium segment. We have luxury brands, Bentley, Lamborghini, Bugatti, and we have a 50% in Porsche, and we will integrate Porsche in Volkswagen as well. And it is the objective to standardize the technology and to standardize modules of our products. But when it comes to what the customer sees in respect of design, performance, materials, we will definitely differ, because that actually gives the distinguished of any of our brands, which is important.
All right, the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit more about the industry. And I don't know any German, but I do know the word Schadenfreude, which has been popularized in a song, and we've been hearing a lot of political commentators talk about it lately. Which is defined as pleasure derived from the misfortunes of others, and kind of brings us to what's going on in the industry with all the problems with Toyota and, of course, with General Motors. There's clearly going to be some kind of a competitive shakeup, looks like, over the next several years. I wondered what your thoughts were about kind of specifically the dilemmas that Toyota's having and their public apologies and so forth. If you think that's going to have any kind of a long-term effect on the competitive landscape in the industry.
Well, one thing why I love to work for Volkswagen is we always stay humble. Yeah, and we will continue to this. If you start to have Schadenfreude, it's actually then your company is maybe in a dangerous situation. Maybe one good attitude of the Germans are that the glass is always half empty, and that makes us more humble than maybe some others. And I don't want to comment the friends of Toyota here. It's a very severe situation here. But it shows also how complex a product can be. And safety, durability, reliability, and quality should remain a major focus on our industry, and definitely remains a major focus on our VW vehicles as well. There is a lot of electronics coming in our car, is already in our car. If you see a good equipped Audi A8, has about 80 electric engines, motors in the vehicle, and has more capacity in its computer than some of the home computers you have, because it is a very electronic based product, and it's getting very, very complex in the future as well. And it is important to secure the quality of this product, the reliability and the durability as well. We will face another regulations by the government as well. I'm afraid of, because the government, of course, has the interest to secure the safety for the drivers. And it shows also how complex that is, because if you rely your technology on platforms, on modules, as I just mentioned, you have to even more ensure that all of these components are correctly engineered and are working properly and are really reliable, because if you have a failure, then you have a situation like the colleagues here of Toyota. So quality must maintain. One of the core objectives of a company. You cannot just only go for growth, you must secure the quality as well.
All right, let me go to the next question then. You commented earlier on how the Chinese market's already overtaking the United States market, and I have some experience working in the Far East. How do you see the industry evolving over the next maybe decade or two, given the $2.5 billion combined population in China and India currently versus about 400 million in America? And
yeah, I don't want to calculate. If China would have the same density in cars compared to population than the United States, I think we would have another 500-600 million vehicles on this planet. It goes in that direction, although China itself is still under-equipped in respect of vehicles. Out of that population which you mentioned, 300 million people can afford a vehicle. That's the same size as the United States here. And of course there's a high demand for vehicles as well. I hadn't been there for quite a long time, and I know with which pace and which speed China is changing, rapidly changing. I'm also amazed what I'm hearing from my colleagues who are working right now in China, how advanced the Chinese thinking is in respect of electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, modern technology also to make mobility also available in the future. China will be maybe the strongest economy in the future, or is already very powerful. It's a big market. It is very competitive as well. We have also to expect Chinese competitors in our industry on a global scale. They will not only remain in China, they will use their technology and their experience to grow also abroad of China, definitely. And I think that Volkswagen has a little bit advantage because we had been a so-called early bird in China. We started already in the late 80s with our first joint venture in Shanghai with SAIC, with the Shanghai Automotive Corporation. And we had been from the very beginning very successful. Early birds is not always a guarantee for industrial success, but it can be. It can be, especially in a market like China. I can really say that Volkswagen has an experience in China. We have a lot of expatriates who worked in China, who understand the Chinese mentality, who has grown with China itself in the automotive industry. And we are dominating. We dominated the market by over 50% market share, and with the WTO, of course, we could not keep this market share. But we are, with General Motors, the #1 in China with our joint ventures. That's a great opportunity for us as well. And it is our biggest market. We sold last year 1.4 million vehicles in China. That's outstanding. And everybody is saying, well, at some point they will have a crisis as well. And so far we cannot see this. There's an ongoing demand. It's also, I think, the first time that even if we have an economic crisis, that countries like China, but you can also see Brazil, are more or less independent what happens here in the United States or in Europe. So they are prospering independently of the economic situation here in Europe. You can say it's a threat, but you can also say that's maybe good for the global economy, that we have a kind of balance. When one industry and one economy is not going as well, then there's another economy which actually can balance this to a certain extent. And we have to understand that this will be also in the future a big automotive market. They're building the infrastructure. They also continue to build public transportation with their fast train systems, with doubling one airport after the other in the metropolitans like Shanghai and Beijing, other areas as well. And it is a very big, interesting market.
Okay. Mercedes-Benz is one too, and other cars. How does Volkswagen as a whole going to deal with that when moving into China?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that for Chinese, copying is not a bad thing. Yeah, and we know that, of course, you have design property rights and that you have copyrights as well. We have seen some of our vehicles in the 80s and 90s totally copied, and but I think that will come to an end. I think Chinese automotive industry is now able to design their own cars, to engineer their own cars. It's not rocket science anymore. I think it comes to an end. We have managed this in a proper way, where either some Chinese suppliers or partners actually went too far. We actually draw the line, and we always find a solution for that. I think it will come to an end as the Chinese automotive industry itself will develop and will be independent and will be able to engineer and develop cars by themselves.
Actually, are going global sourcing. Are there Chinese, like there's tier 1 suppliers in China, has any possibility to?
Yeah. Well, we have global sourcing. Global sourcing offers a lot of opportunity. We believe in free trade. We source in China. Now with our engagement in India, we source in India. We source in Eastern Europe. We source in Brazil. And we will source in North America and the United States as well. Our strategy is based on local production. But production itself, manufacturing itself, has local content, means part of the entire vehicle sourced, and the value based on local currency of only about 30%. The rest is coming from suppliers, as you mentioned. And if you want to be a real local partner, you need to increase that significantly. And our objective is for the cars which we will produce here in the United States to have that local content moved up to 85%. So that's our objective. And even suppliers, we have global suppliers. It's not about having American suppliers or European suppliers. The Europeans are here, the Americans are here anyway, and that is a global supply chain.
When will your Chattanooga plant be rolling cars off the line?
We will start beginning of next year, and we will introduce this vehicle then in the third quarter of 2011. What forecast the market?
The demand for cars?
Yeah, whatever we forecast is not enough. And this market will continue to grow. It's predictable in respect of consumer demand, but it is not predictable and difficult to forecast when it comes to government regulation. And the government actually can turn on and can turn off to a certain extent the demand in China. But this market will pretty soon have, if you combine light trucks and passenger cars, will be bigger than the United States. It will go towards 20 million vehicles.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the next section. At the end of the session, I'd like to have about 10 minutes left over so we can kind of open things up to any questions that you have. The next segment here is about the technology. You know, obviously the different companies are promoting different kinds of drivetrain technologies. And we just had a question about electric drivetrains and so forth. So I guess the first question is kind of the big one. What do you think we're going to be driving 10 years from now? Which of these technologies do you think is going to shake out as the sort of the dominant design, if you will, in the industry?
Yeah, I have to disappoint you. It will be the same technology as we drive today. It will be the old combined combustion engine, which we are driving since 100 years, when we are talking about the majority of vehicles on the road and sold. 10 years. And we believe that that engine can be significantly further improved from the technology and from the engineering point of view, and can really contribute also for fulfilling greenhouse gas and fuel consumption standards in a much cheaper way in respect of investment for the industry and for the consumers as well as for alternative powertrains. That does not mean that there is an increasing trend to alternative powertrains. We will see a migration, most probably top-down, so very wealthy people who can afford a car starting from 50, 60,000 US dollars. If you look at Tesla right now, costs about 100,000 US dollars. And they will start to buy alternative vehicles in respect of the powertrain. Right now it looks like that electric battery-driven vehicles do have maybe the major potential of being the future drivetrain for cars. Hydrogen is a bit more complex, but it's a very advanced technology as well, which is maybe then one step behind. I predict without, it's a little bit looking into really a glass ball, that in 10 years we will have approximately 5% of vehicles sold here in the United States will be pure battery-driven electric vehicles. It's my forecast. Can be more, can be a little bit less. But the combined combustion engine will significantly improve. We will have cars which will drive easily 40, 50, 60 miles per gallon here on this old combined combustion engine.
Okay. Well, this leads me to my next question. The question regarding the clean diesel. This is obviously being promoted during the Super Bowl. You had an Audi ad that was promoting the clean diesels. And wanted to have you comment on kind of the status of that technology relative to other, the trajectory of other offerings in the market.
Now, diesel is unfortunately not very popular here in the United States for many, many reasons. One advantage of Europe is that they have promoted diesel since 15, 20 years. Europe, with its alternative of public transportation, made, I think, one very important step with the first and second oil crisis. It made fuel and gasoline more expensive. A gallon of fuel cost about 4 to 5 times more in Europe than here in the United States. And that actually forces consumers to spend in more efficient powered vehicles. That's why you see in Europe more compact vehicles. That's why you see more diesels in Europe. It's a fantastic engine actually, which saves a lot of money and which brings a lot of fun to drive because the torque is exactly what consumers want to have. We don't have this here in the United States for many, many reasons, especially because politicians are not getting re-elected when they increase taxes. It's a pity actually because fuel is too cheap here in this country. It's a rare raw material which will have its natural end, and we are spending this actually and not really efficiently, and that's actually a pity. Of course, you can force the industry, and this is what government is doing, to offer more fuel-efficient vehicles. But on the other hand, you have to give also something for the consumers that they really buy these vehicles. We have seen in the middle of 2008, when the fuel prices went up to $4 US and more per gallon, that consumers immediately switched to compact vehicles. Not only the Prius, but also the Jetta, the TDIs, and the Honda Fit. High demand, was sold out. Once the fuel price went back to $2.50, American consumers, and it's not American consumers, all consumers, go back to their old habits. So that's the difference actually, and that's why diesel is more popular in Europe. I think that diesel is a real alternative to hybrids. It has its advantages, especially when it comes to long distances. That's why our trucks are driven by diesel engines, not very efficient, but at least they're driven by diesel fuel. And I really hope that in the future also more consumers will switch to diesel-powered engines and vehicles. It's not only fuel efficient, it's fun to drive, is very reliable, and has one of the highest residual values of the vehicle. So it's a real alternative.
Yeah. Now, the viability of this technology also depends on innovations in the oil industry as well. I understand, right?
Yeah, we have improved diesel quality, and that can be further improved. There's a big opportunity with biofuel, not only for diesel but also for gasoline. Countries like Brazil do have like 70–80% of their fuel out of biomass actually, and they have made an economy out of this, and it's working very well. We would have here in the United States the same opportunity. It's a big country actually, and we can industrialize this in a proper way. It's actually not as easy as it looks, but we could definitely increase the part of biofuel in our fuel.
Okay. So you might see this as kind of a bridge technology before we get to things like batteries.
Yeah, we need a
and
lot of
fuel
bridges.
cells. Yeah.
It's not that from one day we wake up and the entire world is full of electric vehicles. It's a very complex technology. We see also the limits of the technology with the quality problems which we see in batteries especially, but also in the powertrain and in the hybrid technology and so on and so on. So we need to get more experience in this technology. The technology itself is known since 120 years. You could have an electric vehicles in the year 1819, it was available. But to make it really reliable, to build up the infrastructure as well. I was wondering if you are here in your parking slot C, where do you fuel your car? Where do you charge your car? That all has to be established. In some areas it's maybe not as complex, but in some areas it's very complex. I'm wondering how that works in downtown Manhattan, that everybody has its cable out of his apartment, yeah, and is trying to plug in his electric vehicle. So we must think about this. Also the batteries itself is a very complex technology. It depending also on raw material, which is coming to an end. So that said, actually, we will have a lot of bridging technologies, good technologies, reliability technologies, and we have to further develop electric vehicles and battery technologies. That would be nice if you could pressure the oil companies. Now,
Make it just more viable in the United States.
there are tax benefits on diesel vehicles.
Right.
You get a tax credit if you buy a diesel car, so that's pretty good as well. But even if it is, in Europe you have tax advantages when you buy diesel fuel in most of the countries. That's why consumers are switching, because it's less painful than if you buy normal gasoline fuel. But here it's at almost an even price. There's a high seasonality, unfortunately, here in the United States because of the capacities of the refineries. It's a very complex subject. It's also the subject of availability, only 70%, and that already significantly increased of all the pump stations here in the United States offer diesel. And it's known as being stinky, and you have smelly hands and all these things. So this is all gone, actually. Yeah? Diesel really is getting much more adult, so to say, and it's much more accepted in other countries, and it takes time until consumers are really seeing the advantages out of diesel.
In particular, Audi's involvement in the 12 and 24-hour races here in Sebring.
Yeah. Well, I'm a racing fan, and of course, the utmost highest technology and adventures are coming out of racing. Whether these are the ceramic brakes, for example, direct injection, for example, aerodynamic, and so on. Automakers get a lot of experience out of racing. And I hope that racing will switch also towards alternative fuels and alternative powertrains. Why shouldn't we have a battery vehicle race? That would be fun as well. Yeah? We don't need only Formula One. A lot of technologies which we are planned to integrate in our vehicles are coming out of the racing, are then getting into the super sports car, and then getting more and more into, let's say, the volume vehicles as well. This has something to do with consumer acceptance. That has something to do with scale of economics. Whenever you have a new technology, you have to pay 3 to 4 times more than if it is rolled out in the entire industry. So there are huge economic scales of economics. You would see this with batteries as well. A battery which costs today $16,000 US, in 10 years it will be only $6,000 US. You can already forecast the advantages out of the scale of economics. We are racing here in the United States TDI, diesel vehicles. We have a race cup with our Jetta TDI, clean diesel. We are racing an average racing with 29 miles per gallon. Yeah, I think that is outstanding. And that shows actually how much you can actually combine environmental issues with fun and with sport. I think it is possible.
Fantastic. I want to move on to talk about VW's strategy, because I want to give you ample time to talk about that. So I want to talk about how you're positioning yourself. And again, during the Super Bowl, we saw the return of the punch buggy game. So I was looking on the web, and I see this actually have an official manual of instructions for the punch dub game. Now, you are the president.
Do you have that here, another page of that?
That's a graphic I pulled off the web, but yeah, I actually saw the whole website, and it's very fun and interactive. So I encourage you to go take a look at the Punch Dub website. But unfortunately, my 11-year-old son's been taking advantage of this. So I'm not sure I'm entirely happy with this.
Did he also acknowledge the no-goes?
The no-goes?
Where not to punch?
Oh, I saw in your commercial the young boy hitting his grandfather apparently a little below the belt there. Yeah. But in any case, now you're the president of the Volkswagen brand. That's correct? So is this part of your campaign here to get this put together?
Yeah.
Well, it's very I guess I'm of an age where this is a nice kind of reminiscent kind of ad. But it looks to me, just from the commercial, that you're trying to reattach the fun, kind of lighthearted kind of dimension to the VW brand and try and draw a younger audience into it and so forth. So I wanted to open it up to you to talk a little bit about what your competitive positioning is going to be here, especially in the U.S. over the next few years.
Yeah. Before I specifically answer this question is, Volkswagen is a product-driven company. And we are not only product-driven, but we are also brand-driven. We believe in strong brands. We think that brands are the foundation of being successful in the market as well. We believe that consumers are not just making a rational decision in buying just commodity. We have that. If you look at the rent-a-car market, you rent a car and you don't care what kind of car you are driving. But the majority of purchasing decision is a very, very emotional decision. Consumers, it's the second biggest investment consumers are doing next to buying a home. And if you add that a consumer is buying every 3 or 4 years, it's maybe the biggest investment private consumers are doing. So it's a very emotional decision, and it is basically driven by the brand itself and its products. And the key is, how do you develop that brand? How do you distinguish the brand in a portfolio the Volkswagen Group has with its 10 brands? It's very, very important, especially when you combine and share technologies under the hood. So to develop the brands is one of the most important marketing tasks which we have. It comes through the products, and it comes through the communication, and it comes through your dealers. So wherever there is a touch point to our consumers, the consumer must feel that is a Volkswagen. Now, this brand has a tremendous history in this country here. I was amazed when I came here and I heard so many stories about Volkswagen. There's more or less no American who has not to tell a story about Volkswagen. This is an icon brand. This is where an entire generation grew up with. It's linked to California, to Woodstock, and to a very special time of this country. And it's in the heart of the American consumers. By saying this, unfortunately, we are not on the shopping list of these consumers. And by all the emotional feelings and all these hard feelings the American consumers have, we need to shift this brand and its products to the minds and consideration of the American consumers. We are lacking on familiarity. That's why you have seen in that commercial the entire product range of the Volkswagen brand. And we are lacking on consideration. We are lacking that on a Saturday morning, somebody is waking up and is saying, hey, there's a Volkswagen for me, and I want to buy a Volkswagen. And I put this on my shopping list next to a Toyota and next to a Honda. This is where we have to work on. We had shifted for many, many reasons this brand too much into the niche positioning, and we have offered wonderful cars for a limited group of consumers in this country, and we need to shift this brand actually into the mindset of the consumers. And that's actually the intention of this campaign. We have changed our advertising agency by the end of last year. We have now a very professional agency, which is not only very creative, but an agency is also part of the strategic work in shifting the brand, as I just have said. It's a big challenge actually, and it's a marketing task, and with all the new products which we are planning, we need actually to bring us into the mindset of the consumers. So that is actually part of our strategy to win the position in this country here. It is, of course, the products itself, but it is also how we marketing these products with our advertising, and very important also, how do we train and experience our dealers, because they are the major direct contact partner to our consumers next to the product itself. It makes no sense if you make an advertising in one direction and your dealers are running to another direction. So it must be in line. Very important in marketing is that kind of, that you have on all tiers. The Super Bowl commercial here on a national level, but then also, as we say in our language, the tier 2 means the regional advertising. But then when it comes to tier 3 and to point of sales marketing, it must be all the same language and the same message. That's actually, I think, what you guys are learning in marketing. Yeah.
Yes, you have a competitive entry pretty much in every market segment. I remember your product lineup. You pretty much have an offering for
we have
almost
much
anybody
more
purchasing
products
a
to
car.
offer than consumers know.
Right.
We have a horrible awareness of some of our products, which could sell much better if consumers would know, and that's what we want to communicate now. Yeah.
Okay. So now, I would think as the one who's out in front of all this, I mean, one of the things I would think would keep you up at night is, what could go wrong? So I was trying to think about critical success factors that might help you succeed, but also might be the kind of things that could serve as obstacles for your success.
I think that the most important thing is that we need to understand this market and the consumer needs. We need to continue to learn that consumers here are different than in China, and especially in our home market in Europe. And that we have to offer products which fits to the needs of the customers and the consumers. And with the right quality. Quality is essential. We made very painful experiences with lousy quality. I admit this. And it is painful to come out of this corner of offering bad quality, expensive cars. You can do whatever you want. It takes much longer time than changing and fixing the car, than changing the perceptions of the consumers. So these are maybe the major obstacles. Missing the sweet spots of the markets and not offering the quality actually which consumers are expecting. And then I would say it's also the basics. Yeah, we need to be competitive. We need to be proactive in the market as well. We should stay humble. That's very important for me as well. Yeah. Management team is important. Consistency in management team is important. The right communication, we talked about that. Are you doing the right marketing strategy? So there are other elements as well. But if I would really say what could we do wrong, it's the wrong products, and it is a lousy quality.
You're keeping fun to drive cars that consumers will
Yeah. Well,
buy from Volkswagen.
the answer is, if you would copy mainstream Japanese or mainstream Asian or mainstream American competitors, we would not succeed. If you have an alternative which has a nameplate of Volkswagen but is a copy of a Toyota or whatsoever, nobody would buy. So our strategy is, We want to go into the sweet spots of the market, but we want to remain what a Volkswagen is about. And with that heritage of the brand and with its fantastic Autobahn engineered vehicles, it's a little bit also image. There are only a few Autobahns which are really with a speed-free or no speed limit anymore, but during night you have a good opportunity to not being catched by the police and drive there. Yeah, and we have also the so-called, within the company, the 300K club, so people who drive a Lamborghini on the Saturday morning at 4:30 in the morning on the highway faster than 300K, which is about 220, 230 miles per hour. That's so the club where we say you're a good driver. I'm kidding a little bit. No, but with this image, yeah, with this actually, with the German workmanship and with what we are putting into our cars, that's important to maintain this. Also the emotional part. I mean, the Beetle itself is a huge asset for us. We will bring a new Beetle here next year, and it will be a fantastic car, and we will of course use that also to bring all the emotions to our vehicles. That's very, very important. Oh, there are R&D positions, don't worry. Yeah.
Very few engineer positions, I would say.
We do have. Yeah, yeah. Maybe not in this stage because the factory is progressing and we are hiring now the first workers, and this is our focus because we want to have this team on board in order to train them. We have a big training center related to this as well. We think that if you really want to grow, and we want to grow from 220,000 Volkswagen to 800,000 Volkswagen until 2018, Audi want to double the volume, or a little bit more than double the volume to 200,000. It's a bit different because Audi is a premium brand, but Volkswagen as a volume manufacturer, that you cannot import these vehicles, number of vehicles, in any country. It's not about the United States. You cannot import 800,000 cars to Europe. You cannot import 800,000 cars to China. That makes no sense. If you are coming in that range, you need to be a real local player. We are producing already in NAFTA, so we have experience in that area here. We have capacities of 350, 400,000 vehicles in Mexico. But to be a real player, you need to produce here. And you mentioned something very important. It is also to get more engineering understanding and capacities locally. And we are developing this and we are establishing this because that gives us a better response time to local consumer needs here. So there's an economic rationale with this plant, especially in getting independent to a strong tendency of a stronger euro compared to the US dollar, getting independent of that, and also to get engineering capacities locally here in the United States.
The strengths of Porsche into VW and yet still maintain the unique brands.
Carefully. That's exactly the point. We always have maintained the specifics of these companies. If you drive a Bentley, you feel everything British in this car. Yeah, it is an English car. We have even brought it back to this vehicle, and we are driving this also with local management. Is very, very important as well. And the same we will do with Porsche. I mean, we would give up everything from Porsche if we would change this to I don't know what, and we would harm the other part as well if we would make that I don't know similar to an Audi. Porsche needs to remain a Porsche. And that means also that we need Porsche management. We are organized in having brand management. And our business is driven by the brands, and the brands have a significant independence. We are not like we have regions, and the American regions is responsible from Audi to Lamborghini to Volkswagen and mixing everything. We have the brand making the right decisions because these are people who are fighting for their brand. Of course, we have a group function as well. I have two functions. I'm the group CEO and I'm also representing the brand Volkswagen. But it is very important to have local management being responsible for the brand itself. And behind the curtain, we can do everything together. Yeah, we can have a Roadster shared with Porsche, Audi, and Volkswagen, but we have to make a Volkswagen distinguish the Volkswagen compared to a Porsche. That is the key element of this. And I think that Volkswagen overall has proven with what we have done with Audi, what we have done with Skoda is a Czech brand more focused on emerging markets like Eastern Europe, Russia, but also India and China, Volkswagen itself, and so on, that we actually can get all the synergies of a big group, but also having a distinguished market representation with the individual brand products. This is essential.
Rather than making transportation more of a public phenomenon?
The simple answer is you have already in this country more cars than people with a driver's license. So you have a totally individual mobility. And whether this will continue like this, maybe not. There will come up other alternatives than just individual mobility. You see already in states like California, car sharing or Zipcar. I think for consumers, the ideal world would be if you would have a Beetle convertible in summer and a Touareg in wintertime for the snow. And in between maybe a mobile home to drive through the national parks in California. That would be the ideal situation. For us it would be a little bit difficult because what should we do in winter times with all the convertibles then?